So we are ready to get the work session started.
All right, have just a variety of topics to update you on for the start of the school year, and Mr. Snyder was wanting to go first, so we will allow him to do so.
No, why, Mr. Snyder? Got dinner with his daughter.
I get that.
So they asked me to come in and update you guys on where we stand with some of the security measures that we put into place as far as security 1 and security 2. I'm happy to say currently we are fully staffed when it comes to security. We have 5 security 2s at the high school that are divided between the main building and the career center. So we have 3.
Chairman, can you explain what the security 2 is as opposed to the others for people who might not?
Okay, so security 1, there's 2 types. There's security 1s and security 2s. Security 1s are when you walk into the building and you see the kiosk, they're wearing a security shirt. They're there to check in guests, get guests where they need to be, run people through Raptor, and also the big part of their responsibility is checking the interior and exterior cameras to make sure that people are in class, we don't have to get hiding out, and then they kind of direct the security 2s on where they need to go, where we're having issues, where we might have a potential issue. The security 2s we look at more as like behavior management. They're out in the hallways, in common areas, making sure we're not having any kind of issues. They're checking bathrooms to make sure we don't have anything going on in there. And then they're also in the cafeteria for lunches to make sure that everything's going the way it's supposed to go in there. And then in the hallways, they're making sure the kids are in class, they're not skipping, if they're tardy, we're getting into class on time, and making sure that we're getting those hallways cleared out. So we have at the high school, we have the 5 security 2s and 3 security 1s. The 5 security 2s are spread between the main building and also career center. And then the 3 security 1s are at the main building, EPI, and the North Annex. The guy at the North Annex is a little bit different because what we ask him to do is he kind of oversees all of the security 1s for me and kind of gets them up and running on the cameras. When we have somebody new or if we're having issues, he kind of helps me address those. And then he's my first on deck sub. So if I have a security 1 that's missing from a building, I can contact him from the North Annex where he's not as busy, and I can fill him into another building in case we have an absence. So that way we're not missing anything or having somebody not be where they're supposed to be. We go to the freshman division. We have 3 security 2s and 1 security 1 at the freshman division. The new positions we have this year were the 3 security 2s, 1 at each middle school. Those guys have been in place and have proven to be pretty beneficial already throughout the school year. We also have 1 security 2 at Elkhart Academy, the high school, the freshman division. And then we have 1 security officer 2 at Pride out at Bristol to help deal with the problems we may have out at Pride. We also currently have 2 full-time school resource officers. We have Bobby Presswood, who runs the Elkhart High School campus, and then we have Officer Jason Tripp, or Corporal Jason Tripp, who runs the freshman division campus. Just as a recap, it gives us 14 security 2s and 4 security 1s and 2 SROs for the entire district.
You said that again. Sorry.
14 security 2s, 4 security 1s, and 2 SROs. Any questions?
How's it been going?
Good. I think it's good.
Come on, Jay, we need a little more enthusiasm.
I'll be honest with you, it's been really good. The middle school program is new. I mean, you're getting the administration and, the security people up to speed on everything. It's a challenge. Yeah. And the reason it's a challenge is because as administrators, a lot of times we are reactive. That means we have a situation, we react to it. With the security 2 people being in the positions that they're in, this gives us the opportunity to be a little bit more proactive. So we can go out and get ahead of issues before they become issues, not just react to that issue. So that's been great. At the high school division, we've had a lot of success, but we get pulled in a lot of different directions. I don't know if anybody's been out here at 4 o'clock when you're trying to get in or out of this campus, but that's our team to make sure everybody gets in and out of this campus in the morning and the afternoon. We do it at the middle school and the freshman division as well. We get pulled to a lot of extracurriculars just because we need the people or we need the bodies to help with extracurriculars, so we work a lot of that. If there's evening programming, we're working a lot of that. We're just getting pulled in a lot of different directions, but I think it's going very well.
Or are there any different issues that you expect to see at the middle school that will be different from the
coming off of summer break, there's always these summer issues that, you know, they have, you know, problems with one another throughout the summer, and unfortunately, when you bring them into a school together, that's the first time they see each other. So you have those community problems that you have to deal with. Vaping is still an issue that we deal with on a regular basis. The fights are, I think, a fewer and far between, but we deal with that kind of stuff. But it's a lot of just managing the chaos or managing the crowd and getting the crowds where they need to be and establishing an expectation of this is how things are going to be and then holding them to that expectation.
What time is it? 4 o'clock?
The high school campus now, I'm very proud to say that the high school releases at 3:45 and we have this entire campus cleared out by 4 o'clock.
So if somebody were to come and watch the magic, it would be 3:45 somewhere.
Yeah, the best seat in the house would probably be right here at the front of the admin building. That would be the best seat in the house. If you're looking for like the B section, coming back there by the student parking lot would be the B section, but it's a very well-oiled machine with a lot of code.
Alright.
So, but usually within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll give it a month, like the parents have figured it out, the traffic pattern. And once we get that established and people have it understood, then we're able to filter through it pretty fast. We're down to less than 15 minutes already, which is pretty good.
That's impressive, because I know that was a big issue.
Yeah.
A while back. So I'm glad to hear.
How is it at the freshman building?
They're done, it's a competition now.
I
Yeah, and they're down below 4 o'clock too, right
That's
at that
awesome.
4 o'clock mark, so, it's kind of fun because between the freshman division and the high school security teams, there's banter, I guess, back and forth, and,
That's healthy.
you know, it's competition, like we got out at 3:57 today, well, sure enough, somebody from the freshman division will say, well, we got done at 3:56, and then, you know, then I have to kind of come in and say, well, can you check the cameras to see if you're I mean, it's a little healthy competition and it works.
Well, I know from talking to several principals after the first couple days, they were very excited with their own, especially the elementary building, and how smoothly dismissal went with parents picking up and stuff, because I know that can get carried at times.
It is.
And they were very pleased with how quickly things were in, and the parents, it just went smoothly. So they were all, you know, cheering for breaking records.
We're working on it.
So.
We'll keep trying. We're going to break that 356 mark.
I can't speak to pickup, but I've been doing drop-offs lately and completely clueless, and it was smooth. Found my way around and dropped them off, so it looked like it was.
For the most part, it runs pretty smooth in the mornings. The nicer part in the mornings is I don't have to have as many people outside because they kind of figured it out. So I can put some of my resources inside to deal with potential issues that may be inside. So we can run it with the skeleton crew outside in the morning. And in the afternoon, because it's everybody leaving at once, it's not a revolving door like the morning. Everybody leaving at once, we have to have more hands on deck outside to deal with it out there.
Is there any questions or comments from the one audience member? No pressure.
I do, but I think I'll discuss it with you later.
Okay.
You
You gotta come to the microphone, please, thank you.
You mentioned something about the vacancy. Is there any way you could do more metal detectors or raise factors or?
We're working. Yeah.
Make it a little bit,
So, you know,
being checked out.
So, one of the things that we look at constantly is I've actually worked with a company locally to kind of come up with options, because I know that we've talked about different things that maybe we can install or purchase or rent, whatever. So I'm working with a local company on the metal detector piece to see, okay, how much and what does it do and how does it work? And then another avenue of that is halo vape detectors that we can install in bathrooms to basically alert me and whoever the security is and administrator is in that building. And basically, if it takes a sample of the air in the bathroom as an anomaly, and then when it periodically takes different, you know, air samples, it'll tell you like, hey, something's not right. It actually gets down to, hey, I can tell you something's right now, there's THC in the air, or there is tobacco in the air. And then we get a text message that kind of alerts us and says, hey, you might want to go check out a hall bathroom. And it's live time, so basically, we're close.
So Jamie, I gotta ask.
Is this a covenant?
Yeah, you're spending your money again, we have buckets.
Jamie, I have a question about, scent detectors. So being the father of a teenage boy, does it methane gas confuse them or? Okay.
I have asked those, there's so much technology and it kind of gets down to what you want. Could you have one that does that?
Sure.
If that's what we wanted, but that phone's gonna be going off all the time.
All the time.
But there's also ones with shot spotter in it, so if it detects a loud enough noise to be gunfire, it'll be a shot spotter. Then you base it down into, like, what are your problems? Is that THC, vaping are problems? Those things would be red flags in the Halo system to tell us, like, hey, this is one of the things you wanted, and it's an issue in this bathroom.
Yeah, Concord using those now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I think they have, not everywhere, they have like a few in trials. There's high school, I believe, maybe intermediate that they're trying, and they've had some moderate success with them.
How easily can they be tampered?
They cannot be, they're tamper-proof. So if somebody messes with it, I get an alert, or we get an alert saying it's been tampered with.
Do we, do searches with the dogs anymore?
We did last year, or I'm sorry, right before the COVID pandemic hit, we started to implement those dog searches. We did one at Northside, and we invited different administrative teams from other buildings to kind of see it, because when I was with the county, we did a lot of these, and back then they were intrusive, like you had to lock everybody in a classroom. It's not like that anymore. We kind of really fine-tuned how we do them. So we had those teams come in, and they kind of had them watch it, but now this year we're kind of looking at, with more dogs available on the street, and maybe we can get those dogs in and do some sweeps of lockers. A lot of kids aren't using lockers, so that's something we'll have to explore, and then even parking lot with student drivers and whoever else we need to search for as far as drivers are concerned. We're working on it.
So how soon do you think you might do the first one?
Whenever you guys tell me to.
Tomorrow?
Try. I know that right now Elkhart County has one dog that works day shift. So Elkhart City has a dog that works day shift, and we're talking narcotics. Goshen has one dog that works narcotics on day shift. Middlebury Schools has a dog, and then Elkhart City also has a explosive dog that works day shift. So getting the dogs in would not be a concern. It's a matter of the timing and getting it right, and then getting everybody on the same page with it. But it wouldn't take much effort at all to set it up.
I appreciate probably the opportunity to train and do that.
Yep. As a guy who trains them, I know they do. Yeah.
Would we also sweep the elementary schools?
Because, I mean, there's when you enter a school property, yeah, we can search anywhere we wanted to on school property. We haven't had too many calls for elementary problems as far as like the vapes and things are concerned. So I would probably start with my focus on the secondary buildings, so we could work down to the elementary schools if we needed to. I think you set the tone by doing the high school or freshman division first, and you kind of work into the middle school. The problem we'll run into is that a lot of that is locker searches. I would say probably 90% of our kids just don't use their lockers. The lockers are empty for 40 years. So now you're getting into ways to how can we, if we're going to be proactive, how can we get those kids out of the classes when their backpacks are, and search those backpacks with the dogs, and then bring the kids back in. There's a process for it.
Fire drill.
Yeah.
That's what they did when I was in school. Every time we had a fire drill, we did every.
We had it, when I was with the Elkhart County, we had it down to a science where we would pick random rooms, or the administrative team would pick random rooms, and they would go and say, hey, let's go into C-108. And we would get everybody from C-108. They would all walk out of the room, they would walk to the left. On the right-hand side, we had the K-9 team. Once they were all out, the K-9 team would come in. A search of the bags in a classroom only takes about 2 minutes. It doesn't take very long at all. If the dog alerts to a backpack, that's where the real investigation starts. So basically, if we had an alert to a backpack, we would just pick the backpack up, take it outside, find out whose backpack it was, and allow that class to go back in. So you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 5 minute disruption tops.
Is the difference like CSA or customs, like when they have the dog walking around the lines, just walking around?
Yeah.
Is it different, and then in the hallways, it'd be too much movement to where they couldn't alert or?
Correct. A lot of these dogs are what they call narcotic utility dogs, which means they're trained in apprehension work, and the movement along the hallways and stuff does not allow them to be in big crowds searching. They have to be, I don't want to say isolated, but it has to be a controlled environment.
question. What if, like, you know, some kids with parents that smoke marijuana, so maybe their backpack smells like marijuana, but there's nothing in there. So would the dog react to that?
Sure. Yep,
And then
you're gonna get an alert to that, and then basically that's where your investigative skills come in. You know, if the backpack smells like marijuana, but there's no marijuana in there, that's where you have to investigate, okay, why does it smell like marijuana? Well, my parents smoked or whatever, and then you kind of start to look into those things and making the ECS contacts, maybe that you need to make, or the law enforcement contacts that you need to make.
Any other questions or comments?
I can talk dogs all day if you guys want to.
One of the things that I remember you telling us in your earlier report was that it might look like Elkhart Community Schools was having, this was last year, beginning of the year, so we hopefully don't have a lot yet, but more arrests because the juvenile detention hall was up and running and they had full services. Is that still going to be your philosophy to try to get kids that may not have services because maybe, I don't know, parents might be in denial or something like that? Is that still kind of?
Yeah, that's so I have a hard time personally comparing the start of last year to the start of this year because we're bringing kids who have been in a classroom for 2 years into a full-time classroom, and some of them have not had that discipline, and we haven't seen them for 2 years. So I try not to bank it too much on last year, but this year I will say we've made a concentrated effort as a security board to basically be enforcing the rules and enforcing the policies and the procedures and how things go, and this is how it's going to be, and this is how things are in real life. And for the most part, the kids have started to buy into it, and they're kind of following those. And I will say that I think it helps with some of our discipline issues because we're getting them to where they need to be in a timely manner so they don't have as much idle time. And if you stay on them, eventually they just get sick of hearing it from you, so they just do it. So we've made a very hard effort to kind of really enforce those rules the schools want us to enforce.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Jamie, thank you for the update. I appreciate it. We just want to make sure that everybody knows Elkhart Community Schools is a safe place to go, so we would love to continue to have updates.
Okay. I'll say one more thing and I'll step away. So we worked the Concord game on Friday. I took a small team of 6 people over there.
Hey, Jamie, can you speak to the mic, please? Because there's other people.
We took a small team to Concord just based on the team. We took a small team to Concord of security people, and just to make sure that everything was on the up and up, and that I think Elkhart had more people there than Concord, to be honest with you. And the amount of praise we got from the administration that attended the game on the Elkhart side, the administration from the Concord people saying it's really cool that your security guys are here, and then the administration from other schools saying, man, it's really nice to see your guys intermixing with the students and talking with the students and the students hanging out with them. And not just standing against the brick wall, holding it up, and actually intermixing. And then we actually have players come up to it during, after, before the game, saying, man, we really appreciate you guys being here. It makes us feel a lot more comfortable. So it's working. We always want it to be faster.
Yeah, but we just need to keep sharing this kind of information to make our parents and our students feel safer because it is important to us, and we are doing a lot to keep our kids safe.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for training your people to be among our kids.
We'll go through the hiring process. That's one thing we look highly at. Anything else, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doug. Who's next?
I think you get me.
Oh.
Yeah. I know that she said that as she was walking out. I will say, as a proud father of a freshman, that the freshman probably beats the high school by about a minute. So I'm going to throw that out.
We're starting something, Tony.
I probably should have went there. So I'm here just to talk a little bit about Sprigio. What we noticed when we shared with our parents group.
Tony, can you explain what that is?
Yeah,
in case anybody watches it?
every school district is required in the state of Indiana to have an anonymous reporting line. And we use Sprigio. Sprigio is a product, but Sprigio is an anonymous reporting system not only for bully prevention, but for any kind of problem. And what we noticed when we presented this, and I'm looking over at one parent that is there, was that we had no idea how easy it was. Many people had no idea how easy it was to use. But the parents group came up with a really good idea of why don't we put it on every kid's iPad, because they have an app. So to give you an update, this is what the app looks like. It is just a little square that says State Spriggio. And it is, and was pushed out to every kid's iPad at the beginning of school this year. So children have the ability to, and adults at home too, have the ability to report. There are many ways to get to Spriggio. iPad for kids or their parents is one way. We actually have Spriggio linked into our own school site. So if you go to report bullying or harmful behavior here, when you click that, it takes you directly to Spriggio. On the app, it's about 3 different screens because the app is a little bit smaller. But you'll notice it's really 1 page of information. That's what they want. So if I go here and I select a school, I can look and all of our schools are here. I'm going to use test sites when I report this. Ms. Brander does not get a copy of what we're doing. And then it asks, who am I? Now, it's an anonymous reporting thing, but what they want to find out is this a parent? Is this somebody in a school? So we can start gathering some information. So if I put other, it's going to ask me the other. And I might just say, I'm a bus driver. All right? Where did the incident recur? So it's going to give me all kinds of options. Where did this occur? Let's see on Facebook. When did it happen? It happened today at 6:30. How many times? If I know, let's say I see it almost every day. Have you reported this to another adult or the principal? No. If I say yes, it does. Who did I report it to? I reported it to Lindsay Brander. Is it causing you or someone else to feel unsafe? Yep, Tony feels unsafe. Who was or will be harmed? Tony. And it says, can you give me any kind of description? Facebook, bullying, around my math grade. What's your name? You'll notice these are the optional fields. If you don't fill it out, you can still submit it and it will submit. If I am the parent or somebody who wants somebody to contact me, it'll also say, can I get an email or a phone number if you want to be contacted back? And if I say, yep, I want to be contacted back, here's my email, then it will upload my email. Right? Gotta say I'm not a robot, and then I'll submit it. Once I submit this, it has now gone to the principal and designee in the building and to the assistant superintendent of student services. So that when Lindsay gets it, then she has some accountability to make sure that everybody is following through back at the school. All right. Why is this important besides just bullying? I wish Jamie were here. Jamie and I, years ago, would get on weekends, because this feeds on weekends, we would get messages that a student was contemplating self-harm on a weekend. Then we would have to, on weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, try to figure out how can we get in contact, who's the person, try to do a quick investigation. So this stuff sends out all the time. And it sends out in real time. This will be in the test site here now. It is really, I think, an effective tool because it's brief. You don't have to put your name down. It asks which school. And Jamie and I have tracked down several other schools in the past when it's in Central and somebody in somewhere else put in Central, but it was Central in Missouri. It was Central, but then we alert those people. So the beautiful thing about Spriggio really is that we get stuff out pretty quickly. This is only one method for us to get information, but it's pretty helpful. That makes sense. I can also just go to Spriggio.com. I don't even have to have our app. I don't have to have our website. If I go to Spriggio.com, it will also bring it up. And then it will start the same questions by asking me which state I'm in.
Tony, I have a question. On the page to where you filled out all the data, you mentioned it was Facebook bullying, stuff like that. Would it be possible to have the verbiage on the far left side right there to say that, okay, provide a link, because all those things off of Facebook you can get a link to. That way, if you're looking for something, you can just hit that right there or paste it into your thing and say, okay, boom, right there it is, because you can spend all day looking for something on Facebook.
So I will contact the guy who owns that company, his name is Joe Barzee, and ask him that question, and see what he has to say. Where we end up with the Facebook, because it's just become, as we all know, if there's a Facebook piece, we're still responsible for protecting schools to investigate those things. So that's an interesting idea that I don't think we have contemplated how to add, and kids can do that.
Because it could be, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever,
Yeah, it could be any of those things, but that's a really good idea, because if they can put it, a link in or something near the description, that could give us more to investigate.
Yeah, something that speeds the process up. Thank you.
No problem. Kudos to the family group who had the idea, and kudos to our tech department, which handled this very quickly, because we had to make sure that the licenses were okay for us to put out, and went out on every iPad for every student.
Do parents know that it's on their kids' iPad?
Well, that's a very funny thing, because what I'm going to say is we have been talking as a group about how to get out information, and we know we're going to do some surveys during parent-teacher conference night, and we're trying to get out some more word through mass email and mass Facebook pieces. So we're trying to coordinate, as our group is trying to coordinate how to work with Brenda, and Brenda has been open to doing that.
I would also suggest, like, for example, some of the schools have really strong PTOs, PTAs that get it to them, and I know a lot of them have Facebook pages that are private. That might be a quick way to get it out as well.
Can you do like all calls and things
Yeah.
that, I mean, every aspect that we have, and the big thing about the, questionnaires, the parent-teacher conferences, so many people don't do that. We had to find a stronger way to get that out. And students, they can turn on their iPads the first day of school, that was downloaded for you. So you just use like plug-and-play, this guy on Wi-Fi connection, possible.
So,
Very unnatural.
I have another question, following up with, being the first day of school, hey, it's downloading automatically and stuff like that. Is there a way to, quote unquote, force, to say, okay, I'm gonna actually require the students to walk through a trial, to say, okay, at least they've done it once and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think when we get done with the training with Oveus, and we have classroom meetings as well, classroom meetings at that point, we can easily add that, and I'm Brander when I say that, Ms. Brander, we can actually add that as one of the classes that gets taught in the classroom.
I think that's a good idea too, because for awareness of the kids, but I think it's great that you showed us a demo, because I think sometimes you feel like things are more complicated than what it is. This is super easy, and to walk the kids through it, I think you'll give them more confidence to report stuff if they see it, if they see how easy this is.
I thought that was really complicated.
And I've
That's you.
I've subbed at a couple of our middle schools once a day for the last 2 weeks, and every time I'm in one of the classes, I show them free on how to use it.
Good.
And then I get 10 fake reports, which is fine, but at least I know they know how to use it, they know where it is. And it's a small population, and we will work to get more of our students aware of the access that they have, but it is on there, and we are seeing an uptick in reporting. Most of it is sort of the, hey, look what I found, I'm going to joke around and do it, but we do it for every report.
Yeah, and I think for some kids, getting on it, even if they're putting a report in like that, then when something really happens, or they know somebody, they can say, no, I know how to do that, and then we get that information. So, the one thing I forgot to show you all, both the app and this has a Spanish feature. So as soon as I push Espanol, and everything is done in Spanish. The app is the same way. There's a wheel up in the top right corner of the app, and it will also translate it into English.
Lindsay, how can you tell if the reports are fake? Just because they put like Bart Simpson or something?
Kind of, or so-and-so farted on me, or things like that.
Don't worry, that's it, yeah.
Exactly. You started.
What I'd like to do when, after we do the LPS training and we have our bullying coordinators within the buildings that are trained doing lessons in the classroom, is really to talk about how to report the students, because sometimes we'll get something legitimate, but the name is anonymous. We don't know who the student is that is the perpetrator of the bullying, who the target is, and so it's just Westside Middle School, this person did this, and that's all the information that we have, and there's no identifying information. It makes it very difficult to look into these. So students,
understand how it works and know that they can safely, anonymously report this, hopefully we'll get more accurate information when they are reporting the bullying incidents.
Other than self-harm or bullying, is there any other incidents that you can think of that would be beneficial to report to the system?
Yeah, I think times when somebody sees a door that's blocked open, when somebody sees something like cracks in sidewalks, it's really meant for not only bully prevention, but anything else that might be dangerous. So it really is left out there for, although it's geared more towards bullying, it's really left for anything that could be a danger.
So Lindsay, like, as far as chain of command, kind of, like, in terms of, like, how you prioritize, I suppose. Like, I don't want you spending all your time following up with this. So when you do your trainings at the building, so obviously you're kind of called in as a last resort, not a first resort, or how does that work?
So we are walking through how we're going to fine-tune the investigation protocols. We have bully prevention, which is that obeys and that training on preventing bullying, but then there really is the investigation protocol. We do have a pretty significant outlined investigation protocol. We will be retraining all of our administrators on that. So what is happening right now, just because I want to be able to view all of the reports, is that I get an email whenever somebody enters in something into Spergio. I just kind of click on it and skim it. I send an email to the administrator of the building, and then I send an email to Todd Kelly, just because he's one of our bully prevention coordinator people. So he's aware that this is coming through, and then I will periodically, like at the end of the day, go into Spergio and see where they are in sort of the investigation process, because we'll say, is it unconfirmed, is it, and we don't necessarily use it for that. We have our own investigation protocol document that we use. So I think just streamlining that process and figuring out what is the chain of command, when do I get involved, what is the accountability on building a follow up on these things. Yeah.
So
you run yourself in circles.
So everything's coming to you. So just for instance, not a bullying situation, but a door left open. It would come to you. You notify the administrator of the building. Obviously, they would send somebody to see the door was open and they close the door. And how does the close move back to you to know that it's been done?
I guess in those instances, I'm not sure. We probably have to figure out what is the chain of command in that. Do I notify Jamie Snyder that we had a safety security issue at the building as well? And then, maybe it really is. Once this has been completed, I need a follow-up call, a follow-up email from you, and I will hunt you down if I don't receive that.
Is there any comments or questions from the
No.
Everybody.
I do have a question. What do you think the response time is? Once a report has been submitted here.
First 24 hours is what we say is our policy.
You think that's short enough?
Do I think it's short enough? Well, it depends on when the report is given, right? Because if the report is given at 3:10 and the kid left at 2:10,
Yeah.
I don't wait till the next day to get people in, except for the people who may be adults that are still in the building. So that 24-hour period to start the investigation, unless it's something like I said, a self-harm piece or something like that, we don't wait on those. If there is imminent danger, we don't wait on those pieces. The danger to something, and we've had people bringing those concerns before.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. No, I don't.
Okay. I'll talk about our transfer procedures now. I've asked Tony to help me with this, because historically I'm not completely understanding our historical practices. So when I saw this in the email, I kind of started diving into the, Indiana Code for Transfer Law and what were our administrative regulations and our board policy. So in a nutshell, we are required to report the board determines how many transfer students we would take per year, and then that number is reported to the state, and then when we would close for transfers. Historically, Elkhart Community Schools, we leave transfers open all year. So the last day of school is the last day that we'll take a transfer for that school year. We've had an unprecedented number of transfer requests this year, and I think it's related to the software and repurposing. Most of the transfer requests have been in district transfer requests. The way that it worked, and I started the day before school started, and the way that we've been doing it is that a call will come in to one of the student services secretaries. Sean is typically the one that takes these calls, but Nancy also knows how to do it, so does Joanne. Call comes in, a parent will request a transfer. Board policy, administrative regulations, we require records. So if they're out-of-district transfers, we require them to provide academic attendance indicators. If they're in district, we have access to those records. We will accept a transfer as long as they don't have an attendance issue. 10 or more days, or they haven't been expelled from a previous corporation, and weapons charged, and then if we have openings within that grade level within that school. We deny those. We deny those. Okay. We deny transfers for the sole reason of athletics.
How would you know if that's why, the only reason why they're?
Athletic.
Oh, they put it on the report?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they will.
Yeah.
Okay, but what happens to the transfer?
Good question. And I don't know, that's not outlined in the Indiana code, it really just says athletics.
Okay.
So I think there is.
What you're often saying in terms of like music or ag, or, I mean, they're co-curricular things or specialized programming, so that way you can.
I was just thinking, if you didn't accept them for athletics, they could be like, well, you accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought years ago they eliminated that policy about athletics because we had a case here at Memorial that had to do with a female basketball player that I think that wanted to go somewhere else. Do you remember that, Mr. Thorne?
I'm so excited to come up here and hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, we also have IHSAA rules that come into play, and that came into play in that particular situation. That's how the IHSAA deals with those particular issues in terms of their eligibility on that particular case.
But that had went to court.
Yes,
Well,
it
yeah,
did.
but we don't technically have to sign off on an athlete. They would
That's
have to
right.
take it up with the IHSA, and then it goes to a court.
Yeah, when there's a transfer during that period of time, the athletic directors can actually, in essence, file an objection with IHSAA specific to that particular issue and say, it is because of this. It is because of athletics. And as you might recall, that went all the way up to the Indiana Supreme Court in terms of hearings where our friends to the west were arguing that it had nothing to do with athletics.
And that was a big deal.
Yeah, it was.
But we would sign off maybe for, 2 JV players and a unnamed freshman later.
It's just got everything.
That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted to hear.
Well, shake your head.
So when someone, let's say they're within district, and they want to request a transfer, it was my understanding, and I know that from my view, when my kids were involved, it really came down to a lot of times with the principal, and it was kind of sold, it was a year-to-year thing. It wasn't a guarantee for every year. And so parents would have to redo every year, but yet that was kind of presented that way. But yet, in some buildings, they were, after the first year, they were in effect permanent. So how does that work?
So I can speak to that. So what happened several years, right before COVID, and a couple years before that, at the end of the school year, a memo went out to all of the principals saying, here's a list of all the students you have on an in-district transfer. Are there any students that we should be discussing about their ability to return next year? If so, let's have that discussion now so we can let them know before the end of the year. If the rest of the students, except for little Tony and little Lindsay, are okay, then we're going to go ahead and send their parents a letter now saying that they can continue on being on the transfer next year. The reason was we didn't want to jam people up at the beginning of the year and have parents who had to find new babysitters and things like that because they had a new pattern. And we saw very few kids where that was the issue. But if I'm little Tony and I'm at Cleveland and my home school is Feasibility, and I don't get to school attendance internally, I get a beautiful little yellow limousine that will come pick me up and take me to Feasibility.
Right.
So then the issue is, I need you to be at school, which means that you should be attending Caesar. You weren't able to make it to Cleveland like you needed to, and the attendance wasn't okay. We also did that with behavior. If there was a ton of behavior that needed to be looked at, and this is in board policy and administrative regs, then the principal has several things they do. One, they have a meeting with the parent and outline a plan to help continue with that kid and help that kid be successful at their transfer school. If that doesn't work, then they have one more meeting with the parent and outline what the plan is, and then the parent can say, I'm going to deny you continuing here, but they do that at the end of the semester.
Okay, so next question, and I know, you know, with the situation we have with Hawthorne and things were in flux, but I think there was a lot of maybe miscommunication or too early communication. Example, parent is said, yeah, the principal tells the parent who is a current transfer student in a building, yes, you can come back next year. Then because of the Hawthorne situation, they're told, and this happens to be a sixth grade, they're going to be a sixth grader. Then they're told, no, sorry, there's no transfers being allowed for our building this year because of that. So now this sixth grader who's never been to any other school before, as a sixth grader, is now got to go back to their home school. I mean, they were originally told they could come, and then they're told, no, they can't come. So,
I'm not sure, so Leaders Money and I were in place when the repurposing of Hawthorne happened, but I do know that there was a meeting with those administrators of buildings impacted by the repurposing that would be either receiving students and losing their students, and so there was a discussion at that time to flow to transfers until they could determine how many students would be redistricted into their schools.
And I think that was, and I think it was really about how many classroom openings do I really have of students who are supposed to come here. And then once we know where all those are, then we can talk about how many other students I can accept. And I am hoping that the sixth grade students were a priority to get back in when there were openings, because if they hadn't been anyplace else, that would be a big deal. And the way things were repurposed, right, there were a large amount of students who had been at Roosevelt that went back. You know?
right.
And so there was some changing around, and Monger lost some of their territory and gained some others. So there were some people in that spot, and trying to make sure the folks that were in the new boundaries got in there, and then we could talk about after everyone else moved that had the ability, what did we have left, so that we didn't leave teachers with classrooms of 30 and 40. I think that was really, and unfortunately, I think there was some pain going through the process for some folks.
Yeah, it's hard, and it's not easy, the whole thing, so I understand that, just trying to figure out, you know, there seems to be a lot of, there's one thing to say, we're hoping to do this is our plan, and, you know, being sure that we're communicating clearly, to parents and what the actual situation may be, and that they may not be able to attend. I think that's important.
And I think that moving forward, especially as we go into next school year and planning and now that things are stabilizing, we will go back to adopting that practice of letting parents know, you know, that every year we have to re-up your transfer, this will be the process, you will be notified if your transfer will be revoked, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, and parents shouldn't be surprised if there's a request to go back to their home school from a principal. That principal has met with them ahead of time, where their attendance has caused the trigger of a principal to call parents, hey, we need to come in, we need to make a plan, your kid's not getting here, and that is the one transfer that can happen in mid-semester, because that would increase the attendance. Behavior we did in semesters, because most of the schools are equipped with the same external personnel and internal personnel supporting behavior. So that was why we waited until semesters to do that, and also gives time for a plan that the principal and the parent work together and work. So
I think it's important that everybody, the parents, understands the process, and it's clear.
Yeah, and the principals helped write the process. Probably my second or third years here, we all sat down together, a group of principals represented, and we worked out based on because there were new regs that came out for external coming in, who have some different rights and responsibilities because of the open boundaries that exist when we start saying things.
and we'll make sure for this year that it is clearly communicated what the process is moving forward.
Appreciate that.
I do have a,
I thought you were gonna ask.
no, I do have a question,
Okay.
but do you have any?
No.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, you like riding.
Oh, I think I need to
Lindsay, can you talk a little bit about the process, like the different pieces that are connected or required to determine the process? And then what are your plans for maybe streamlining or adjusting the process?
So the way that it works now is that a call comes into student services and a request is made for a transfer. Whoever answers the phone within student services will fill out the transfer request. As long as there's not a glaring reason as to why we should accept the transfer, there's opening capacity-wise at the school, we accept the transfer. If there is some question on, the appropriateness of the transfer, the secretarial staff will reach out to the building administrator or might ask me. I would like to streamline that process as we move forward. Within the administrative regulations, it does say the assistant superintendent of student services will review all of the applications and meet with the families. I'm not sure how feasible that is with the number of transfer requests that we get. However, I do feel that the administrators need to have a voice in the transfer process. So it does say administrative assistant superintendent or designee. I think what I'd like to see in the future is that we get these requests in, rather than giving a immediate response, it's a yes or no. There's a review process that happens that includes the administrator of the building and myself. And then responses communicated out to the parents.
How many transfers are you seeing?
So that's a difficult number to judge right now. Right now, it's unprecedented. We've seen more than we have in the past. The way that we code a transfer within Power School is a manual process. It's not an automatic, so we have to manually enter the transfer and then manually remove the transfer. Right now, what we're going through is looking at all the transfer icons within Power School and determining if the student was affected by the redistricting process when offering was repurposed, and determining if they are still on a transfer or, with that transfer canceled out because now they are within the boundaries of the school that they are attending. The last I checked, we were about 150 students within the school district on transfers.
Thank you.
But again, that's a Power School number, and I'm not sure how accurate that is right now.
Okay, thank you.
So some of the pieces that go into one transfer, I heard you say, is Power School, which changes daily.
Correct.
Student Services has a piece.
Yeah.
The building principals have a piece. There's a technology piece as far as what can be streamlined or adjusted. And then HR kind of has a piece with the openings and hiring process. So
Correct.
You may not have a question, but this is how my thought is.
Yeah.
How can we make all of those pieces connect better so that one person or everybody has access to all of those pieces so that the transfer process is not just more streamlined, but whoever is deciding has all of those pieces so that one person decides, gets to the principal, and there are circumstances that we didn't know about. So that's what I would like to see in the process. How can you make all those pieces fit better and maybe bring all those people to the table to figure out how can we streamline this, how can we communicate better to make it an easier process for everybody involved.
And I think it was more intentional in our planning moving forward, and including those staffing pieces as well.
Does anybody else?
I did have one quick question because of in some buildings, trying to keep class sizes smaller. Is that part of what building principal has to take into consideration in this process in terms of looking at their classes and wanting to keep them smaller?
Yeah, so the instructional leadership team determines from year to year what the range of class sizes would be. And this is how it works at the elementary level. This is how it works at the elementary level as far as I know this year. So I have a range of classes, and if we start to, principals will email me and say, I would like to close this grade level based on class numbers, and then it's either yes or no based on the range. I would like to streamline that process as well.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of hit or miss with, I would like to be more intentional about looking at staffing numbers, looking at numbers of students per classroom. What have we determined, what has the board determined, the number of transfer students that we'll take per year,
And then, rather than principals having to reach out to me to say, hey, please close this, and if, you know, I'm getting multiple emails from principals, it's more of, you've reached capacity within your sixth grade section, so I'm gonna close the transfers for your grade section.
But plus, also, those principals will know if they have a newer, teacher, or even a teacher that is kind of like more of a long-term sub that may not want to have as many. So I think they need to have quite a voice in making sure that they aren't overloading teachers that are not ready or being overloaded at all.
Right, and I'll be honest, I am exploring how that works right now, but just understanding.
I will, Mindy, Brad, Maggie, meet with every principal and say, how many students do you have per grade level? How many sections do you have? How full would you like those sections to be based on this year's staffing? If you keep your transfer kids in those numbers, then that would mean you have this many kids. Then they can start looking at the capacity, and then that informs what do we do with staff, and informs how many maybe additional transfer students we'd be able to accept.
But does that process only look at the number of sections? So if you had 3 sections, but you had empty staff positions, that doesn't, how does that factor in? Because you have the sections, but maybe not the staff.
And in many of those, we don't have enough transfer students that we're needing to add another teacher necessarily. So it's for kids within that attendance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mindy, but when you were looking at those numbers, in most instances, there are enough in-school kids that you would need that number of sections. Yeah,
Yes, please.
Well, and I will also say that as far as when to close sections, because staffing turnover happens constantly, we don't always know whether a grade level will be staffed until the start of the school year.
So basically, when you do staffing, you look at the current, let's say that I'm looking at next year's second grade, so I'm gonna look at the current first grade numbers. And then you sit with the principal and you say, okay, how many students do you have in first grade? How many teachers do you have in first grade? What are you projecting for next year? Then the transfer conversation. But Dr. Thalheimer's right, there's usually not like an overwhelming number of transfers that would justify a new section. However, it just depends on the number that's currently in that grade level, and it's constantly in flux. So if we have a grade level that's like right on the edge, we'll say, let's keep an eye on that, and then let's meet in a few more weeks. Look at your numbers again and see if they've changed. If they have, that would justify opening up another section. That makes sense. So it's just, it's you know, follow up with the principal, it's really staying on top of those numbers, because it can go the other way too. You know, you can be right on the edge and you can open a section, but then lose a couple kids, and so you're just, especially in the situation that we're in now, it's super important that we're really keeping an eye on those numbers.
You know, just understand that better the other day when we met, because I just thought, well, why wouldn't you just, well, we don't have much staff, so, you know, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, that was helpful.
Linda, can you share, I know you did tell us already, but can you share what happens if a school is at capacity, but they still keep getting new families that move into their community? And I know we can't turn them down, so what happens at that time?
So internally, you look at the staff that you have internally, so is there a grade level that maybe can go ahead and be divided? You know, can they reshuffle within their grade level so that you can pull a teacher outside of that grade level to go to another? That's not ideal because it's a teacher, then assigned to a class and you get all set up, but sometimes in those circumstances, in order to internally fulfill that need, that's one option. There have also been times where if we have a paraprofessional, that paraprofessional can be assigned to that grade level to support the higher number. So you can take an instructional para and say, okay, you're going to be assigned to second grade. We know that there's, you know, a high number of kids within that grade level, but you're only going to be to that grade level so that then that para can support. That's another way of looking at it. So there's creative ways of working around it. Not always ideal, but there are solutions that you look at first before then you look at outside.
Sounds difficult, you know.
It's complicated, you know.
Does anybody else have any more questions? Oh, were you done, Lisa?
Oh, I couldn't stay up here and talk.
Oh, an hour you found it good.
I know,
Yeah, look at
okay.
that, there you go, good.
They lost enough here.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know we've gotten a lot of questions about the transfer process, and anytime we can communicate what we're working on, what's working, what's not working, what we're moving towards, I think that goes well to build trust and relationship with our families. So thank you.
I appreciate any feedback on processes at any time.
Thank you. I thought you were coming
Mr.
back up
Thorne.
to the mic.
I'm running away, sorry. Apparently it is my turn. Yeah, I will be brief and magnificent, in the words of, Tony England. I provided you all with a handout that kind of lays out all of the things that Maggie and I was going to talk about, but given the time, I'll try and narrow my comments so that we don't stretch too far into the regular board meeting. As you can see, the Human Resources Department continues to hire staff, and as building principals continue to interview staff and make recommendations, they're making offers to candidates. It's happening on a regular, as you can see by the dates here, really almost a daily basis in terms of those particular issues. What I want to spend a little bit more time is talking to you about how we are managing and how we are addressing class size, load issues, what are the things that we're doing to address that. And really, at this point in time, much of this is dealing more with how we compensate teachers for taking on that additional load. Because I don't think any of us are going to find a wellspring of teachers out there that are waiting to come to work in any school district. All you have to do is watch the national news on any day, and it is a nationwide problem. It's not an Elkhart problem. It's everywhere. So what we're focusing now on is how can we work with our employee association on this particular issue? What are some of the creative things that we're looking to do to try and address issues? The first thing that we do, quite honestly, on a daily basis, we've done this at all of our schools forever, is what's called period substitution, which would be if Mr. Weaver has period prep and Mr. Scott's going to be absent that day, Mr. Weaver might go over and pick up that class. When he does that, we pay what's called a period substitution to Mr. Weaver, which is a $41 rate. That's determined by the master contract. And the master contract says, for example, if Mr. Scott's going to be gone, maybe he's going to be gone for a half day. And the other half of that day happens to be his prep period. So Mr. Weaver is only covering for one period. So we take a look at how many minutes that is. And if it's 68 minutes under our contract, we round that up to the next half hour for that. So Mr. Weaver would get paid for 90 minutes for period substitution. So that's one example of how it happens. Another example might be that Mr. Weaver's a generous guy, and we need an additional section of biology. So Mr. Weaver agrees to take what's called an overload. And an overload, in essence, means that Mr. Weaver, for the fall semester, is going to teach biology every single day and give up his preparation period for that. Again, there's a method of compensation for that. In fact, during the last year, we slightly revised the model in terms of how we compensate for that. We take Mr. Weaver's daily rate. Let's say he earns $65,000 a year. Take his daily rate, divided by 184. And then we add an interesting number, which is 17 hours and 50 cents an hour to that. And then we look at the number of hours that he's doing that period substitution to come up with how he gets paid for that. You might ask, why the 1750? The 1750 is predicated on this theory, which doesn't really work in this day and age where every district is looking for teachers, but historically works from the standpoint of the association doesn't want to create for us an incentive to say, you know what, I don't need to hire that extra biology teacher. I can overload all the biology teachers in my department and save money. So the idea is to kind of create a little bit of a disincentive to do that. But that's one of the ways that we are covering periods, covering missing sections because of our staff shortages throughout the district. And it's reached the point even now where it's not just within the building, but for example, we have a memorial. 20 years of staying memorial, sometimes it's hard to stop. We have staff from the high school that is going over during a prep period to cover a section at that time. So that's one of the things that we're doing there. Increased class sizes are existing throughout the district, and we are continuing to work with the association on how we will address that particular issue, so that if Ms. Mullins has a class of, say, 28 sixth graders, we might view that 28 to 1 is a little bit high. And so at 28 to 1, last year, she would receive $750 a grading period for that additional workload that you have from that standpoint. So that's how we've been addressing that at the elementary schools in terms of those issues. We're still working through the details with the Teachers Association on exactly how much that's going to be this year, trying to balance the finance piece with the need to recognize you're taking on additional work, you take on an overload. And quite honestly, teachers who take a full overload and give us that prep period, it becomes a pretty exhausting work day because now you're doing the preparation outside of your standard work day. So we're dealing with that, and we're also dealing with some of those things as well in terms of special education, IEPs, and those types of things. Those teachers, as well as a number of other employees who are in a situation where their work day goes out, their work expands beyond the work day, beyond a normal work day, and beyond what we normally might expect for a teacher to do. We're paying them their professional hourly rate to provide that work. A couple of the things that we're doing, this kind of gets into even some more creative work here. We are in the process of making some changes to the substitute teacher requirements so that there isn't an automatic 30 hours that substitutes have to receive in order to substitute. We're dropping that particular requirement. It's not a policy, but it's been our practice, and replacing that by an expectation that those folks go through the parapro examination so that we can assess their teaching skills over time, which should help us again in trying to increase our sub-pool. We are continuing a partnership with Lifeline. Lifeline over the last couple of years has, under a contract with us, provided paraprofessional support in a number of our buildings. It works to the benefit of Lifeline, and it works for us as well in terms of how we handle the cost from that standpoint. One other issue I want to kind of give you, actually, we want a little bit of direction from you. We are looking to change again some of the requirements for paraprofessionals. Historically, and this goes back to when No Child Left was behind this act, the federal government created this concept that to be a paraprofessional in a Title I building, you had to be highly effective. Now, we had paraprofessionals who had worked for us for 25 years, who were phenomenal paraprofessionals, but didn't have the number of credit hours or hadn't passed the parapro examination. When that went into place, we also made a decision as a school corporation. I don't want to say that only the paraprofessionals in our Title I buildings were highly effective, and we didn't really care about the non-Title buildings, so we established that as a rule across the board. We would like to, we wanted to get a little bit of quick guidance from the board on this particular issue, change our practice. And we want to do this in partnership with adult education, where if somebody comes to us and they don't have those minimum requirements under the highly effective model to be a paraprofessional, we could still hire them to serve as a paraprofessional. In partnership with our own adult education program, we would help them to study for and prepare for the parapro assessment so that by the time we finish this school year, they've met that standard, and we help them along the way in terms of doing that. So that's another thing that we're looking at as to how can we create more and more incentives for people to come and work within our school district and serve the needs of our kids. So that's kind of a very, okay, I went more than 5 minutes, but give you an idea of some of the many things that we're looking at doing to try and address really what, as you all know, is the nationwide challenge here in Elkhart.
Is that assessment just something we use, or is that something all schools?
It's a national assessment. It's actually, it comes out of ECS, Educational Testing Services. And we would also be, our proposal would be cost of the assessment. It used to run about $55. We used to do it right out of our human resources department. About 3-4 years ago, we moved it to adult education. Adult education also does some coursework support for individuals who might want to pass that test so that they can qualify to be a paraprofessional.
How long is the training?
Typically, it runs about 12 hours in total. Between 12 and 18 hours is what adult education says it typically takes for an employee to do that,
Okay.
for an individual to do that. We would compensate those paraprofessionals at the professional hour at their hourly rate during the time that they're taking that coursework with adult education.
Okay. How's the Teachers Association doing with, requirements starting to be lessened, for people in the classroom?
We, with one exception that we're in the process of working through with ethos, who I do not be in our classroom, we have not adopted or planned to do a great deal in terms of that teachers. In fact, Mr. Scott just in the last couple of days was checking with other districts, and there are very, very small. In fact, I don't think anybody he surveyed was actually using adjunct. So, to some extent, our use of adjunct in terms of our partnership with ethos, it will be very much of an outlier in terms of that particular issue. And that's still a process, so as soon as we have a little bit more of that mapped out, we'll be sharing that information with you and want people to hear.
One of the conversations we've had about that is that if we would try to put people through the traditional path, emergency permits, alternative licensure, those kind of things. And then if somebody comes in and is really doing a bang-up job for us and they wouldn't necessarily do the coursework or do what would be necessary for an emergency permit, maybe in those instances with somebody who's come in and started the traditional route, proven themselves, then we might look at them in terms of an adjunct. But those are some early conversations we've had. But we would have a trial period in many of those instances before we would just hop in and put somebody on an adjunct license.
Okay.
And of course, you also got the coalition that we belong to that provides other avenues for us that wouldn't exist for other school districts.
So Doug, I've heard on several occasions that our hiring process is clunky, that takes way too long. We have, I know several instances where people have applied for positions and have not even received callbacks for paraprofessionals, nurses, jobs that we need desperately in our system. What are we doing to try and streamline those processes and make the hiring easier for us and for our candidates?
Roxy, I'll be honest, it's a hard question to answer, and I'll tell you why it's a hard question to answer. Because sometimes there are candidates in the pipeline that are available for administrators to look at, and it's incumbent upon them to make the effort to do that. Because really, the decision as to who I want to recommend comes up from the building, not down from the central office saying, here's a paraprofessional. If we want to change that model, that's an option that's available for us, where in essence, the HR department would say, okay, we're going to hire this nurse and we're going to assign her to this building. That has not been the history that Elkhart has done in terms of that particular issue. But that's one option. I know there are people who frequently talk to us about how clunky the process is. Back when I ran the personnel department, I heard the same thing all the time. Sometimes it is the fault of the department. Sometimes it's the fault of the candidate. Because candidates have to, for example, go through the process of the criminal background check. You send out the information to that candidate to do that, and then they don't submit the information in a timely fashion, and we're waiting for that candidate to communicate that information to us. So, I think it's something we're continuing to look at. I think it's something that Maggie is looking hard at. How can she make the process as efficient as possible, so that things move along well? But I'd say the other thing that I, as the attorney, sometimes get nervous about is making sure that we're still, if we're using screening tools, we're using screening tools effectively, and we're not also getting so far away from them that we can't defend our hiring So it's finding that right balance.
So, West Side, somebody applied for the nurse's position there. Nobody had called her. Our new principal took the initiative, called the person, interviewed the person, wanted to hire the person, and then the administration put a pause on it. West Side still does not have a nurse.
Yep.
We have secretaries handing out medications.
Right, and I can tell you what the debate focuses on there. The principal wants to hire an LPN for that particular position. And there's a question as to how we balance between hiring of RNs, LPNs, how do we handle the supervision issues? So there are some complexities that we need to work through, and there are some issues related to that quite honestly, there's more than one of us in this room who has an opinion on that particular issue. Argue with the superintendent. Looks like she's ready to leap up.
Okay.
Well, the previous nurse was an LPN. So it's not like we're replacing an RN with an LPN.
Rocky, I've been advocating for years that we hire more LPNs. So you're not going to get an argument from me on that particular issue. It's how you readjust the staffing model across the district for that.
And I will say that that is a discussion, but that's not what necessarily happened in this case. She was called prior to us being notified that she was being offered the job, and she did not call back. We approved that yes, we could hire an LPN. I had to double check because there is a supervision requirement, and RN has to oversee the work of an LPN. She was called and she never called back. When she finally did, she was offered the job. So we're waiting to hear if she's going to accept or not. And that's kind of where we are. So she has been extended the job offer. How well that's been communicated, I don't know, and I will take responsibility for that.
I'm just curious, because I need to know this. Why would a principal prefer an LPN over an RN?
Access, sometimes it's easier to hire LPNs than RNs. It's just a licensing requirement. LPNs have less training.
Right.
And they can't administer certain medications, and they have to be overseen by a nurse with a bachelor's degree.
It might be the person they prefer, not the credential.
And it might be the only person they have to hire.
So if what you're saying, like narcotics, like, if that would be Adderall or anything like that?
Oh, I don't know what the specific medication requirement.
Okay, I mean, wouldn't that be, so then you would hire an LPN, but you still need a nurse to be able to medicine though?
There are certain medications, certain procedures that an RN can do that an LPN cannot. So for some of you are now experiencing the internal debate that we've had about how do we restructure our staffing model for nurses to balance RNs, which are very difficult to hire. Talk to your friends who run Elkhart General Hospital and Memorial Hospital and St. Joe. They're having the same problem that we are. In fact, 2 weeks ago I was talking to Carl Russ and talking to Mr. Casella, who's the CFO for Beacon, and they want to stop hiring locum tenens because the locum tenens, which are traveling nurses, that they pay a huge premium for, triple, are dealing with. So part of it, I mean, it gets to the whole question of the market for nurses, balance, laying all of this out, and it is a process that is in flux right now.
Do we have the ability to have an RN that would cover 4 schools and oversee those LPNs? Is that part of the process?
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
How to create a more sustainable model moving forward, and relying less on contracted services.
Okay.
You know, 20 years ago, we had RNs in every one of our buildings.
Yep.
That's, you know, and 20 years ago, you looked at some of our surrounding districts, they had 1 RN in the district, and that was it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful to know that you're working on that.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, I have some more comments. I have some. But do you have one before? I just want to speak to the process because there's a couple pieces of the process I know from my experience in HR, but just from hearing the stories. One process could be the technology. If you have a system that only kicks people through when they complete certain steps. If there's anything missing from the paper reports they need to upload, they don't get through. And unless you go in and check, and it could be a manual check, daily, several times a day, you won't know that that person hasn't completed that process until maybe it's too late. Another part of the process is that assessment. Are we in a position now that that assessment should be a requirement, or is it a preferred? And how else can we get that's not something for you to answer, I'm just saying that, because are we turning down qualified people because they didn't necessarily fit into this assessment, when we can know that some of these assessments can be biased? So at this point, for our great need of staff, should that be a preferred or a required, or is there an alternative if they don't pass those assessments?
I would love to have a conversation with you about that. And my conversation would be more from the standpoint of what I see on the other side when we've lowered the bar on that assessment. Quite honestly, there have been a number of occasions when it's those employees that we've lowered the bar that end up in my office.
I'm not talking about lowering the bar. I'm saying using that assessment in a different way, and maybe there's an additional way to test their qualifications.
Yes, we have worked that strategy and continue to make some adjustments to the strategy as we go along. So I think there are some things we can talk about that.
And then the third one is, I know that in other districts, they have, like, you hire somebody on the spot and maybe contingent upon finishing the rest of the process.
Yep.
How often do we utilize that? Are the principals empowered to do that? Because we lose out, because if our process is long, we're taking 2 weeks to get back. Somebody else can offer, and now we've lost another candidate. So how are we utilizing
We
that?
have done that in the past. We did not do that this year, but I can tell you that a couple of years ago, when we were doing a lot of active campus recruiting, we were hiring people on that time, on that basis, on that day, on the spot. Now, here's the downfall to that process is those aren't really binding contracts, and that candidate might get a better deal between the time that we made the offer to them and offered them a contract and the summer. So that's one of the things we experienced the last time in terms of that process. I'm not saying we can't utilize it again, because I think it's right. I think you want to strike while the iron is hot and hire that person, but it doesn't always work out.
I think we just need to be more innovative with the low number of candidates we have, the high demand for them. We have people sending our people emails, stealing them just right out of our inboxes. So we have to be a little bit more adaptive to the times that we're in now and utilize our processes and resources a little bit more.
One of the things that we're going to start doing this year is actually start the recruiting process now for next year.
Hey, great.
I know that's something that Maggie and Dr. Shepard and Dr. Lee have working on, is exactly that. So we're building those relationships now, also building those relationships with our student teachers now, so that we're locking them in now and building that relationship. One of the things that you know that Dr. Higginson has included in her grant application is to include our student teachers in the mentorship program. I think that is also a way for them to become part of the Elkhart family and be less likely to go next door.
Why was this the year that you guys didn't empower the principals? Why was this the year that it just didn't happen?
I think we sent principals out. You have to remember, I'm not as actively involved in HR as I was when I oversaw the department. I
just want to know, it's odd to me if you did it before, this would be.
I don't think I think most of the time that was being done on, from my understanding of the past, it was done at recruiting events. And we weren't really, people weren't going out to recruiting events. And when people did go to recruiting events, there was nobody there, or like nobody would come to your table, or kids, especially maybe a little more this year from what you folks saw, especially with my U South Bend people. But in the previous couple of years, I mean, people weren't signing up. I mean, kids would have jobs lined up and weren't coming to recruiting events. There'd be very little turnout.
The other thing I can tell you is this year, there has been a change in terms of how some of the things that Maggie has been doing in the department. She has been giving principals some more authority to have conversations with teachers about coming on board, the area where they don't have quite the same ability is how much we're gonna pay them.
Sure.
Especially when we're talking about teachers coming to Elkhart who have prior experience, where that still needs to be part of the conversation with HR. And we are in a seller's market now, so it's extraordinary what teachers are coming to us and saying, well, if you want me to come over here, here's what you need to do for me. Well, we still have a collective bargaining agreement, and we still have limits to our financial resources.
Do we have the ability, like if you have a senior, teacher in college and stuff like that, to, lock them in at the first semester of their senior year?
And that gets back to, lock them in, binding contract.
Well,
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult from that standpoint.
well, I was just remembering, my oldest daughter, went to Manchester and stuff like that, and Liberty Mutual, of course, she'd done an internship with it, but by October of her senior year, they had locked her in, and, there was a, I don't know, signing bonus or something like that, and then she was allowed to party her brains out for the last 2 semesters. It really worked out fine.
Mr. Weaver, given that Liberty Mutual is our insurer, I'm a little concerned about hearing that type of commentary.
That's okay. She handled the UPS drivers, so she's good. But anyhow, that's just a suggestion. Another suggestion is, I was, the $300 and the $350, for a substitute and stuff like that, seemed to be, seems like a good way to go. But I've also noticed, of the people I know around Elkhart, there are retired people around here who are doctors. They got PhDs, engineering degrees, bachelors and associates. Would it be doable to say, okay, well, we're going to make a sliding scale and to say if you have a doctoral degree in some discipline?
Already, I voted yes to that because, again, it goes back to protecting our parents. But, it goes back to the teachers already being, upset because, I'll be honest with you, sorry, Kevin, but if we have money to pay Elevate, we have money to do this with substitutes, I don't know how we're not handing up more money to pay our teachers. So I can't imagine doing this.
Well, I was going back just trying to get more people to work for us.
You'll see how we're doing that in terms of.
Just because
dealing
it's
with the
breaks my
overall
heart.
issue. No, I hear you.
I get it that we're short on teachers, but if we can come up with money to Elevate and we can come up with money for substitutes, it's difficult to understand how we can't pay our teachers more money. And their parents.
My goal would be to pay everybody more money.
I'm too.
So we're on the same team.
Yeah, I know. But I don't mean to cut you off, Jeff, but I can't imagine doing this sliding scale at this point when we have.
Well, you just shut down my idea.
I did. Let's shut it down quick.
We will be taking a look at what other districts are paying substitutes. I'm pretty confident, although we're gonna do some more research, and we're still leading the pack in the area, but we will be looking at that. So I may be back yet again with more changes to substitute compensation, as well as compensation increases for overload and class size. We probably will see in 2 weeks.
So Doug, I did ask Maggie, or she shared with us a similar question about can we offer she was specifically talking about interns from IUSC or somewhere. I think she said that you cannot offer them a job maybe until 11 or 16 weeks before they graduate.
Oh,
Don't quote me, but it was some kind of
Universities
stipulation.
have lots of rules.
yeah, and while they're student teaching, some allow you to pay substitutes, some don't, those kind of things. So when they're in their student teaching experience, we can start courting them and try to get them on contract so that they can maybe start for us in January if they're doing fall student teaching. But depending on the policy of their home school, we may or may not be able to pay them as a sub while they're doing that.
Well, because in Lauren's case, they had a financial stipend of some kind if she showed up and actually went to work for them. It was kind of like a hiring bonus, so to speak, which was, it was attractive.
I love to be creative.
All right, just saying, okay.
I have one more.
Yeah.
I know that some of the positions are posted for only 5 days.
Yeah.
And I think that might be maybe not best practice, because you really, how many candidates can you get in 5 days? How much diversity can you get in 5 days? It doesn't look as maybe, transparent, or it's not as equitable. I would love to see that 10-day minimum for all job postings, because maybe the person who I'm in Troy's department has a position. I know it, so, but if I'm at an elementary school or outside the district, how will people know in 5 days? I would love to see that be a 10-day minimum, because it feels like a more equitable process to get more qualified candidates.
That's something I think we can, I think we've already had some conversations about that. Of course, what that also does is stretch out the time frame between where a position becomes vacant and when it gets filled.
So do we want to fill it quick, or do we want the right people?
Oh, I want the right people.
So 5 days
I'm
is not enough for that.
I'm not arguing with you, but I'm just pointing out there are consequences to all these decisions, that will be made.
And another pay, a paraprofessional sub-pay, waiting to find the right person.
Yeah, because 5 business days is not going to make or break a big, in the whole scheme of things.
Like I said, I think we're in the process of reviewing.
So I would love to continue this conversation outside.
I would be delighted. You know where to find me.
Okay,
Anything else? Thank you.
thank you.
I'll be back up.
Appreciate it.
Spending more money on employees.
You were magnificent, Anne Marie.
I'm trying to be great and magnificent. I fail miserably. Magnificent.
Is that okay, we'll take a short break before we start the voting.
Distraction, they had, I think, so.
stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, sorry, Doug. I didn't know. I thought everybody was in here. I'm sorry.
You say the Pledge of Allegiance already?
I did.
We need to do it again for you.
Right, I know it already. The Elkhart Promise. Every student is known by name, challenged, and supported by highly effective staff and in partnership with community and will graduate career, college-ready, and life-ready.
Thank you, Doug. So, invitation to speak protocol, there is a sheet on the back of the bulletin that Dora's holding up. If you fill that out, give it to her. You'll have 3 minutes to speak at the end of the meeting. After each agenda item, I will open up for comments or questions. Now you have support, so you'll have to make all the comments. So once we finish all the comments and move on, you have to wait if you have another comment on the past issue to the end of the board meeting. First up, we have Tara, who is going to give us a moment of silence.
Good evening. In addition to being an outstanding provider of resources and innovation to the Elkhart community, Elkhart Public Library is also a true champion and partner of Elkhart Community. In 2018, the director of Elkhart Public Library, Feasibility, shared with me that as part of their strategic plan, they were including as one of their goals to help every child read and succeed by grade 3. From this goal, we have created a strong, collaborative, and supportive relationship between EPL and ECS that has allowed us to work together to share knowledge, ideas, resources, programming, and best practices that enrich the learning and the lives of our students. Tonight, it is my pleasure to welcome my friends and partners from Elkhart Public Library to share with you some exciting results from a new program they started called Growing Readers. With us tonight, we have Lisa Gudea-Carreño, Director of Elkhart Public Library, Mary Beth Schwabach, the Assistant Director of Public Services, Allison McLean, Supervisor of Young People Services, and Sonia Oakland, Literacy Tutor. So I'm going to turn it over to Allison and Sonia. Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
As Tara said, my name is Allison McLean, and I'm the head of Young People Services at the Elkhart Public Library. And my job entails supervising a department that serves families with children from birth to age 18. And we do a variety of things, but one of the things we do is literacy. And Tara already shared with you, our current strategic plan does have a whole section dedicated to early literacy up to grade 3. And so the plan's goal is to provide opportunities for every child to read and succeed by grade 3. And over the lifetime of this plan, we had various underlying goals of how to achieve that. But there was one thing that still stuck in my mind, and we were looking for a way to help these parents who are coming into the library and saying, my child is a struggling reader, and what can the library do to help them? And I did not have a good answer for that question at the time, so we would, of course, show them our section of books for early readers and show them the various things that we had to offer, but I didn't ever feel like I had a good answer to that question. So we looked around at how we could better fulfill that. So in partnership, of course, with Elkhart Community Schools, we have been able to achieve more than we could alone. I truly believe that we're stronger together, and it is benefits all the kids living here in Elkhart that can work together and do more than we can do on our own. So our goal is to support parents and schools
So I did look around to what other libraries have done. I'm sure our library is not the only one getting this question. And found that very few libraries have done what we were envisioning, which was to offer reading tutoring. And I think there are many reasons that this is rare to find. And number one of them, of course, is that I'm a trained librarian, and that is not the same skill set as a teacher. So I'm still qualified to teach, so it's good to have a read. And so we would definitely have to look outside of our current staff to find someone with that skill set. And so I did find, though, very close to home, Muncie Public Library has already a program just like this, so it was almost ready-made for us to copy. So we really lucked out that they were close and that they have been doing this for a few years. They call their program Muncie Ready Readers, and we were able to visit and learn from them and see what they have done and adapt the model to our community and make the changes we need to make so it works here. And of course, the first thing we needed was a tutor to run the program. And I was very grateful for the support of my administration, Lisa and Mary Beth, and they were able to give us an additional 30 hours per person to take on this project. And so we just really lucked out with our reading tutor, Sonia, and she almost fell into our lap. So she has taken it on and made it the amazing program that it is. I'm just sort of the idea behind the project, and I could not have done it without her. And so we did kick it off this year in March, and we had a spring session and a summer session that are now complete. And so Sonia will now tell you about how it's been going and what we plan for the future.
Yeah, Sonia. I've 26 years veteran of Goshen, so close on. So these are some statistics from our first couple of sessions. I'm not going to read it to you, but we service kids age 3 up until they start 3rd grade. So we're trying to get a really good foundation for their reading success. Elkhart Promise has been wonderful. It's been wonderful of sharing materials, especially the phonics program, which I was trained on when I taught in Goshen. So the kids see the same materials and hear the same language for phonics tutoring that they hear in the classroom. And it's really fun to see them walk in and see the coaches. Whoa, how did you know that? So that's fun. What's different about our program than typical tutoring is the parents. When we first started, I kept asking parents, why are you signing your child up for this half-hour a week tutoring session? And I heard over and over, my child is struggling and I don't know what to do. So I set it up with the parents are highly encouraged to not only to stay on their phones, but for the parents who have chosen to participate, it's been really powerful. We sit with the student between us, and we have our session, and the parents is welcome to say what they noticed. I say what I noticed. The child reads. I read to the child to model comprehension strategies and vocabulary building. We do phonics games, and the parents are free to ask me questions or to say what they noticed. One thing that has happened, we've had 39 students. 5 kids have gotten glasses because as the parent and I watch the child, we go, are you seeing those letters? And then the parent is on the phone right away to the eye doctor, and the child has glasses. So it's a much faster turnaround than classroom, which is really lovely. Typical, I mean, it's a half an hour, so we go really fast. We do a phonics thing, we do a little vocabulary. They read to me, I read to them, and parents participate as much as possible. Then they check out the materials, take them home, and they sign papers. Reread the book at home. We've they are. And they are, all guys that have met their grade level goals, just in a few short weeks. So we're super excited about the program, and we welcome more referrals. We'll get them in. Fun and exciting.
Look how happy they are when they're learning.
It's like that. It is. And the parents say to me over and over, like, I know what to do. They get a little tiny bite for the week this week. Find the letter R wherever you go. Like, you know, a little tiny. So it feels much more powerful than when I was in the classroom trying to do it a lot. So God bless your teachers who are working so hard at that. If I can help them a little bit, that's my goal. And the teachers also have been excellent about working with me when I'm emailing them about questions and how I can support their kids.
Thank you, great mission, yeah.
So is this open to everybody? Do they have to apply to the schools to get in? How does this work?
It's open to kids in Elkhart Public Library, or district. So Concord kids will, but yeah, they can, there's a link on the website, they can they've been to referrals.
We're working our way through a waiting list, but, we also wanted to share that we are expanding the program with more tutors. That is the question. Our goal is we can find the tutors. I know they have find tutors. So but we are hiring right now. We're looking for the program.
So right now, is your capacity 22?
24.
Oh.
Thank you for that parent accountability. I mean, yeah, that is extremely important for learning, and plus it gives them the affirmation that they can do it. So then you have that connection. Yeah,
And the first time I did the kid homework, well, the parent is sitting there, and then the next week they come back and the kid goes, yeah, I didn't do that. The parent.
Yeah.
I may have missed it. So how are you funded then?
Through the library's budget, operating budget, and so, it is, like, on a salary is paid, just the same as any other library staff. That's our current model anyway, but we're looking for additional funding.
Okay, see, how would this work with the governor and the IDOE's announcement with tutoring and things like that?
I don't know without the parameters of that having come out.
Different tutoring programs,
Yeah,
how that was.
I don't know.
I saw the announcement that there was money coming out.
Can you come up to the microphone?
Yeah, the 111 million, between Lilly and the DOE together, to look on, best reading practices, a resource center to pay stipends to teachers who go through training on, further or advanced literacy training, and the ability to hire coaches within schools.
But there was another announcement, I think, today that had to do with the tutoring.
Yeah, I don't know how that's coming
How
out.
that's gonna wash out.
Yeah, I don't, there haven't been any details about that yet.
Okay.
I'll be glad.
Yeah, we'll stay tuned.
And that's also for helping Concord.
I just appreciate the collaboration, and I love the rising tide lifts all ships mentality, because that's definitely what we're going to be needing to do as we go into the future here. So I just want to thank you guys for that humble spirit to do that, and Tara for your participation. And I love that the kids are getting the repetition from one, building to the next, and it's just great. Thank you.
I just want to commend Tara. She has been wonderful to work with. Ideas back and forth.
If you speak, can you come up to the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
I just want to commend Tara and say how wonderful it is to work with her. She's been so cooperative and encouraging, and the ideas that go back and forth, it's just been great. It's helped us be more intentional about what we do, and I want to give her props to you all. Yay.
Is there any questions or comments from the audience?
Well, I have a comment.
Is there a way, how many, kids are Elkhart Community Schools out of this group of 24?
I'm not sure, there's a sprinkling of Concord kids.
Okay. All right. Well, my question was there a way to track these kids with, that are Elkhart Community School students, and to see, okay, okay, bang, we're getting here, and here with these guys that, so we got a kind of a feedback loop and tracking on that particular student.
We actually started when they initially launched, we started with specific emails to principals for referrals to get that person going just with in Elkhart. So we took those referrals first. But yes, we could definitely get on a loop and start tracking some data of how many of these kids are ours and what else going forward.
Yeah, so we can measure success and then we can also report that success. So.
We're librarians, we all love data. That's right, exactly.
Is there any other comments? Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Up next, we have our consent items. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Is there any discussion, Kelly?
Okay, I'm sorry, what?
Is there any discussion on any donation?
Okay, here we are. WNDU donated 700 backpacks along with supplies to Elkhart Community Schools, and then Lippert Components Plant 182 donated an additional 50 backpacks. So that was wonderful. And then a donation of $250 has been given to our football program by Brian and Amanda Jameson. Okay, that's it.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Dr. Carter, you up next with instructional report?
As the other members of the instructional leadership team come up, I will start out the report by sharing with you the first item. And there's a list of these talking points in front of you there, since I know that many of you like to have this to be able to refer to and take with you. So on August 18th, Thursday, we had our first elementary principal cohort coaching session with Cheyenne from Solution Tree. And they did a lot of work looking at their data, looking at outlier schools as if they had some results kind of separate from everybody else's and what might have been behind that, and then setting some building student achievement goals. So it was kind of a ground setting first session for all of those elementary principals, and before we had a couple different coaches working with elementary principals. This year they're all working with the same coach and receiving the same information and training. Beth, you want to talk about EL?
Sure. So as far as EL data, we prepared our data department prepared spreadsheets for every principal, every school that has EL student data, how they performed on the access for 2022, and so the reading, writing, speaking, listening, core domains, as well as the past 2 years, so they can look at the growth or whether it was growth or whether it's not growth. Our next step is we are preparing a data form for them to share at the next administrative meeting early September. So we reported out the district data, so they will then share with us their specific data on how many students went to proficiency last year, how many students are close, or how many students are not making growth, and who are those students. In particular, we were looking at those students that are level 4s, that are really close to getting to proficiency. Where is the specific area that they need help in? What can they provide? What is their plan in their building to provide some extra services, or looking at specific domain needs like the reading or the listening, speaking, to get them over that hurdle to get to English proficiency. So they will be submitting those so that the point of this too is that the principals, the English EL teachers, the classroom teachers, they know their students, student by student, with the data and the needs that they need. So that instruction can happen with sign-up, in their PLC groups, as well as the EL teacher participating in programming in PLC.
Our next step, so at the last administrative meeting, we also gave the principals, so we're educating the principals and they're bringing it out to their staff and kind of the supporting process. Because our main goal here was to get the principals to be educational leaders in their EL program. So we shared with them the one of the components of SIOP, which is lesson preparation. So each component has features, and those features help with the design and the delivery of instruction. So lesson preparation is what we shared with them, what does that look like, some examples, and the design, the features, which would be like supplemental materials. What do I need to consider? What supplemental materials do I need to consider for my English language learners, and at what level, from 1 to 4, whatever I have in my classroom? How do I adapt the content so that they have access to the curriculum? So then we'll be preparing 15 to 20 minutes CD videos so that we'll have each feature designated on each of those videos. So it walks them through lesson preparation in a more detailed manner than what was presented in the original SIOP. Professional development, we went through the module. So we're preparing those, get those out to the principals in advance so that they can have those every third Thursday of the month, so that they can share out with their staff in the way that the principal, whether it's a staff meeting, whether it's PLCs, how the principal will design that. Questions?
Is there any questions or comments from the audience? There is one person behind you. Thank you, Beth.
Hey, updates on assessment. So we are about halfway through our first assessment, beginning of the year with our status, which is the assessment of the reading program. So far, it's gone very smoothly, a lot better than last year. And familiar, challenges, but it's gone much more smoothly this time around. Had a few technology glitches, but that's so that's been good. We, prior to testing with data and assessment, Justice, staff, me, myself, and Ricky Myers, had a meeting with all our test coordinators. Created a video then that they could take back and share with staff as well as handouts. That also helps for things to go so. Of course, I'm very anxious to see our beginning of the year data, how that went before we left in the spring, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Our next test window will open next week, and that will be right into engineering, the checklists, and side-by-side with the dyslexia screener. The dyslexia screener is part of that NWCA. Third grade teachers will be training for foundations this month. They're all signed up because of our situation. They're doing regional training. So what that means is rather than have a trainer come to us, they will go online and they can select from a whole host of dates. So it'll be staggered. We won't have everybody out on one day. So that will be good. Over the summer, as we hired new teachers and paid one to train them with foundations, those that didn't get trained during the summer that maybe were hired on after that, they will also have the opportunity to be trained in September. So principals have turned in the names and we turned them into the company, and that is moving forward. Math expressions training has also begun. Our new teachers have training this week for our math program. All of our other teachers will have 2 math expression sessions per semester. And again, there's lots of options to choose from because of our substitution. Set those out. Make sure you don't have to say Jody Norris, our math coach, has scheduled meetings with all of the principals. She started those visits, and she's going to gauge the needs of each building. And then if she knows what the needs are, she can follow up and do some customization on individual buildings. So that's where we're at in terms of assessment and training. Anything launched here this fall.
Cindy, when do you get the scores back?
The results are pretty immediate, so the window closes next Friday, and then, Lois and I will take this and put it into the spreadsheet, so it takes us about a week or two to get everything in here, but it'll be pretty immediate. Okay? Other questions?
I think it's thinking of the way that this was outlined.
We should
That is follow.
Yeah, thank you.
You are welcome.
Any questions or comments for Mindy from the audience? Okay, thanks, Mindy.
The next piece was something that refers to a task I had done in 2019. So when the ISEC, or when the iLearn test had changed in 2019, one of the things that we were curious about was what predictive ability does NWEA have on how students might do on iLearn. And there hadn't been any really correlational studies or anything done because the iLearn was new, but for us to get some idea of what our target NWEA results were, I had asked Data and Assessment to provide me every student in grade 3 through 8, and then for us to be able to have their NWEA rankings, percentiles, and their iLearn scores side by side. And then I would rank them by whether they passed the iLearn or not, and then rank them by their percentile and their score that they received on NWEA. And you could find that point, at which point an NWEA percentile or RIT score meant that a kid was most likely to pass iLearn. And so I kind of did an average of those scores around that area and roughly reported out to buildings that for third grade language arts, you would need this kind of RIT score to be in a good position to pass iLearn. That way we would know as we're looking at the scores through the year. Well, with not having iLearn scores and not having any of that, and knowing that it wasn't a great system during COVID, now that we're back to this, I've asked for that data file again to go back in and do that again and see, are those scores similar to what they were in 2019? Have they moved? What that is? And then we would be able to know what kind of targets should we be having for students on NWEA in order for them to have potential to pass language arts or math in grade 3 through 8 when they get to iLearn. So we're going to be working on those files over the coming week and get those out to buildings so they can have that. Brad isn't here because he's taking care of something with his family, but in the high school data realm, IXL is an online program that's used that does instructional videos and has some built-in assessments on that, and there are conversations at the high school level because it's available K through 12 to use the IXL online program for assessments to give us some of that benchmarking like we get with the SABIS assessment and that we're doing through the NWEA. So again, as we've talked about, there's that kind of black hole that happens because we don't have anything between 8th grade NWEA and the time they take the SAT. So in that area, this would give us that in those core areas. And so they're talking about that becoming a benchmark informative assessment process. And then 8th grade end of the year NWEA data is going to be made available to freshman division teachers so that they can see where students finished in 8th grade in terms of a RIT score, roughly where their lexile and reading level would be, and those kind of things, so that they have that data to inform groups and work and know where students are. So that's coming to them in English and math. And then finally, the dashboard conversation that we had, that's under development, and it'll be an iterative process that as we get this NWEA checklist data, put that in there and bring it to you to take a look at and see if it's user-friendly, and we'll work through it, and I'll receive your feedback so that we know where that is, and we'll kind of be building that at each stage along the way. But that those NWEA checklists that will be finished over the next couple of weeks, and that data will be compared to where students, again, left off kindergarten first, second, where are we now, and then where that's our targets for this year in terms of that 18% improvement we're looking at over those 3 grade levels. Any questions or anything I can answer for you this, or back into the team?
Anything from the audience? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited about that dashboard.
Thank you, guys.
Our favorite presenter is back.
He's gonna make it 0.
And breathe.
you know, if you guys hadn't asked all those questions, I would have been down in 5 minutes, but I enjoyed the bike-way and the interchange. I've got some policies to talk about this evening. The first one is our teacher appreciation policy, which is the teacher appreciation grant policy. This is a grant that's funded by the Indiana Department of Education, and basically goes to teachers who are rated effective and highly effective. The state communicates to us sometime typically in December, January, how much money they're going to allocate for us for that, and then we go through the process of calculating based upon the percentages that are set forth in this policy, how much a teacher gets based upon their evaluation rating for the prior year. The stipend is paid to the teachers that are rated as highly effective is always going to be, for this policy, 25% higher than the stipend that's paid to teachers who are rated as effective. The state gives us the dollar amount, and this is, oh, by the way, turn this around in 20 days and get it out, which is what the policy calls for. This year, the only change, we discussed this policy change with the EPA, is the date when we are going to submit the policy and our appraisal plan to the Indiana Department of Education. Last year it was September the 15th, 2021. This year it's September the 16th, 2021. Bringing this tonight for initial consideration. Questions you might have on this? Dreadfield.
We're changing the date by 1 year and 1 day. Do we really need to bring this back for a second reading? Can't we just do this?
It's up to the board members, this time, want to waive second reading.
Motion to waive second reading.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you so much. Second, as you recall, 2 weeks ago, we brought the substitute compensation plan to you for initial consideration. And actually, wait a second, we've done that. Guess what? We're going to ask you the same thing tonight. Our purpose is twofold here. One is to clarify some of the issues that Mrs. Fonzell pointed out, as did Mr. Scott, during the meeting last 2 weeks ago, related to how we pay a retired teacher in a long-term assignment. The clarity is as follows. If the teacher's daily rate of pay prior to retirement was less than $350, they'll continue to get the $350. If it was higher, they'll get the higher rate. The second thing that we discovered as we were looking at the policy and we bringing this back to add that particular issue in is we do have retired teachers from the district and outside of the district who will serve as a substitute for a paraprofessional or a technical assistant. And we thought because the workload in that role is less, that we proposed to pay them $145 for a full day and $75 for a half day serving in that role. We would like for you to approve this and waive second reading. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have related to that policy.
Is there a motion?
Motion to waive second reading and approve tonight. That's what I should say. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now is there any discussion?
Okay, now, I know that when you said, because their work is less of a load, that's just meaning what? Because sometimes we are working our paraprofessionals extremely hard between lunch hours, taking care of everything before you jump in from classroom to classroom.
It means that they're supporting another team. They're supporting another adult in the role as a paraprofessional. They're not responsible for actually teaching the lesson or implementing the lesson plan. And so that's the rationale for the differential between the two.
But it still, this doesn't change what we're going to do then, pay the paraprofessional.
Do.
So that
Does not.
that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, we'd be independent.
So, just another quick question,
Yeah.
just to clarify. So, with the retired teachers,
Yes.
they're gonna be doing lesson plans too, and grading and doing all that?
If they are serving in a long-term position, they would be doing all of those
All of
things.
that, which
If they're
justifies
serving as kind of an itinerant sub, for
No.
lack of a better word, they're typically not doing that. Their role is merely to re-implement the lesson plan that's been developed by the classroom teacher.
right, so I just wanna clarify, that's why the $350, for example, is that because they are going to be doing, in a long-term position, be responsible for lesson planning, grading, whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, just want to clarify that.
Is there any other discussion? Anything from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, today was your lucky day, Doug.
I believe this was magnificent, or as close as I've ever gotten.
You're getting there.
Okay. Down to the fun stuff.
Kevin, it's good to see you without your,
I
glad you're feeling
done
good.
an injection and I'm feeling much better.
Good.
More upright.
Yay, good.
So, now I can feel those old aches and pains. My knees are bothering me. Thanks for that. This evening I'd like to report that our fund balances at the end of July 2022 is $44,127,592. As you can see in the education and operations detail page behind that, we are tracking much the same as last year. Items of note as you look back through the receipts and expenditure summary is significant negative balances for ESSER funds. The good news is it's just timing. We received $3.6 million in reimbursements that we sent in August, and so we'll see those negative balances. Those are my comments on the financial report. If there are any questions, I'll move on to insurance.
Had a question on the Easter. Okay, in Easter 3, we have a section called non-program charges transfer.
Yes.
So, is that?
A large piece of that was related to the negative balance that we ran in food service through COVID. And so we worked on language as it related to COVID and the supply chain issues and the extra costs we ran. So we had an amount in there to transfer to food service. Now, as Tony reported, this last year was much improved. You know, we implemented a new software system that gave us better inventory control. We're still suffering from supply chain issues and where that cost is, but we did finish the fiscal year of 22 in black, and performing much better than we had in previous years. So, will we need that? Can I reallocate that towards more HVAC, building environment improvement, those kind of things? So it's
educational
it's
type
kind
things.
of our educational needs.
So
We,
kind of a,
as we manage that large amount of money and we get further into the program, how are we doing, how are we performing, and what could we modify to help ourselves with students? So,
okay, I just want that clarification.
yeah,
It's kind of a
that's great
broad
question.
catch-all that we can maybe move around if needed. Okay.
Anything else?
And one more, on the non-public allocation school transfer. That's in, ESSER 1?
ESSER
1. So,
Yes, and that's the one where those folks are actually behind it.
so yeah,
Spending, we've done a pretty good job at.
so what happens, because they've got till the end of September, right?
Yeah, the clock is ticking.
So,
Those are just dollars.
can we get access to that if they don't use it, or not?
That's your,
The rules are.
don't know. I'll turn to the expert.
Yes, we can. So I'm working with the non-publics to spend their funds down. They've all got a plan, a lot of it's in process.
Okay.
But like with any other federal grant, if the non-public is not going to spend their funds, I work with them, and this has happened in the past with the non-public school. There's a form that they will relinquish their funds to Elkhart Community Schools in a timely manner that we can spend it.
Right. And they just have to be encumbered by the end of September?
And expended in December.
And then, so
We have a very small window.
So that was my question. How small of a window do we have?
So right now, they will spend their funds.
Okay.
The only one, I'm concerned about one right now, in a small amount of money, and I'm working with that principal
Okay.
as we speak. If they don't, I need to know by September 1st so that we can access.
Okay.
They
Great.
have bordering lead time issues. But then have the plans.
No, as long as we don't have anything like that right now, but we're careful what we're letting them order. If it can't be, received and liquidated, the funds liquidated by December, then we have to cancel that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other financial questions for the financial? So as you know, we migrated to Anthem this year. Our timing has been really good until June. Had a rough month in June. August hasn't been so hot this month. But July was an improvement over June. We're still running ahead of what expected expense, almost 10% year to date. The other thing I talked about previously was we start tracking folks when they hit the $50,000 claim threshold. Through July, we've had 21 individuals that way, none hit the stop loss threshold. Yeah. The last 2 years, that number was 25 folks that we were tracking, so we're still a little better in that regard. A couple other things I want to mention is curriculum materials, textbook builds. We're still working on pricing. Normally, we try to bring those here in August. We'll be coming forward with those in September. And I also wanted to mention, new to the consent agenda this time was the Career Center sponsorship program, which Mr. Eakins has come and spoke with the board about, and is having some success. So that'll be a regular page in the consent agenda that we'll provide, assuming there's sponsorships. I would assume also that most of those will occur at the start of the year. They're for the school year. So these agreements and the language in it, for whatever their sponsorship level is for the school year. And depending on the amount of sponsorship, they get more kind of visibility through things in the Career Center. So, very positive program, and he's starting to see results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, George, do we have any? Dr. Cohen, do we have anything?
Just wanted to say that last Wednesday on the 17th, we were officially approved by the CCISD Consortium for our waiver. They had given me verbal agreement that it was okay. The group met by a virtual meeting, voted unanimously, and we're good to go with that. So we are officially approved for that. Just a reminder that on September 13th and 14th, we have the SiteLogic School IQ work that will be done. So again, on the 13th, the 5:45 to 7 o'clock work session is the School IQ group during our work session, working with you on priorities and information regarding the key committee to formulate for the feasibility process. We've scheduled at 9 o'clock on the morning of the 14th that we will do a Google Meet with administrators and provide an opportunity here in this building for people who are here if they'd like to come in person, but we will broadcast it out to the buildings via Google Meet for administrators to hear the plan and to understand what's happening and ask questions. And then on the evening of the 14th at 6:30 at the high school auditorium will be the public meeting to explain the feasibility process, where the School IQ team will explain the process much like they did in the interview process with you and answer questions from the public. And then my final thing would be to thank all of the staff members who are shuffling and filling in and doing things, including many of my colleagues here in this room who have slid over particularly to Westside or to Pierre Moran while we're all trying to do our duties here, but still support the buildings until we can get those staffing challenges better met. So I just want to thank them and thank everybody across the district who's working hard filling in.
Is there anything from the board member?
Yes. I would like to congratulate our varsity football team and our junior varsity football team for some impressive victories Friday and Saturday. We defeated the evil Minutemen from Concord 33-0 Friday night and 20-0 Saturday morning. This Friday will be our first home game of the season, and I would like to see everybody there cheering on the Lions. Go Lions!
All right.
Who can top that announcement?
Well,
Radio person.
maybe, I don't know, radio voice, but I just thought I would let you know, from your staff and everybody, that there's a group that meets, at a different building every Sunday at 2:30 in the most positive way possible, and they pray over staff and the students and the building. So there's a group of our parents, and even some parents are coming from other schools that heard about it, so the group is getting bigger, but they've just taken on the task of being at every single school. They take it on Sunday at 2:30, so I just thought I would let you guys know that there's just a group praying over our students and staff and everybody in our school.
If anybody wants to participate, Kelly, how do they know the schedule or?
Well, I mean, they
Do
can.
you want to come up and share?
No, I don't want to come up. But we'll be at Woodlands this Sunday. And I don't do Facebook,
Yeah.
but others in the group do.
Yeah.
I think they're going to announce it on like the Facebook of her community teachers something
Yeah.
page.
And it's
Because they do want to invite other people.
yeah. And it's
Kelly, can you repeat what she said? Because
So,
people online can't hear
this Sunday, there'll be a Woodland at 2:30, and there's a Facebook page that is specifically for it. I think it's Elkhart Community Schools Prayer, I think is what it is, but I can find out more, but like, last week we were at the administration praying over it, and then, so every Sunday, it'll just be a different school, and it's nice to see teachers, and, word's getting out about it, so I just thought you should know that that is happening on behalf of all of you.
I had been inquired about it, and I said it was fine, so.
Yeah.
Because people were concerned about church and state and that kind of thing, and I said, it's meeting off time, it's
Yeah.
not an issue, so, yeah. So.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
Yeah.
In the journal?